Groundwater, which is all water stored underground, is a lifeline for Oregon's communities, economies, and ecosystems. It accounts for more than 90% of the state's freshwater supply. Importantly, Oregon's groundwater is a public resource. It belongs to the people. So, how does the state manage this vital resource? In this episode of Oregon Water Matters, we'll talk about Oregon's framework for managing groundwater. The Oregon Water Resources Department is the agency responsible for managing the use of Oregon's water resources. The Oregon Water Resources Department manages groundwater uses to ensure they align with the public interest. This includes working to maintain adequate water supplies for all. Since 1955, uses of groundwater have required a state water permit, with a few exceptions, which we'll talk about in a moment. For now, know that state water permits provide a right to use water according to specified terms. They also protect water users from the impacts of new water uses. When are state water permits not required? The Oregon legislature has recognized several groundwater uses that do not require a permit. These are called exempt uses. The most common exempt use of groundwater is for domestic water uses. Other common exemptions include small industrial or commercial uses, as well as public interest purposes like firefighting. In 2025, the legislature added a new exemption for groundwater use. Now, a permit is not required for the use of 3,000 or fewer gallons of water to irrigate lawns, commercial gardens, and personal gardens of less than a half acre in size. Oregon recognizes that groundwater and surface water are connected, and it manages the use of these resources accordingly. This is termed conjunctive management, and it means the state considers impacts to connected surface waters when managing groundwater, and vice versa. This science-based approach to water resources management supports sustainable water use and protects existing uses. But Oregon still faces significant challenges related to groundwater management. In many areas of the state, groundwater uses exceed the amount of water that aquifers can recover through natural processes like rain and snowmelt. This means in these areas, Oregon's groundwater levels are declining. Domestic wells are often the first water uses to be impacted by declining groundwater levels. This is because these wells tend to be shallower. So how is Oregon addressing this issue? The Oregon Water Resources Department can designate impacted areas for special management to address unsustainable groundwater uses. How does Oregon address groundwater quality? The 1989 Groundwater Quality Act is Oregon's principal law for protecting the quality of the state's groundwater resources. The law was recently updated during the 2025 legislative session to strengthen the state's framework for protecting groundwater. The goals of the act are to prevent groundwater contamination, conserve and restore groundwater, and maintain high-quality groundwater resources. How does the Groundwater Quality Act work? The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, is the lead agency responsible for implementing the Groundwater Quality Act. The Act tasks the DEQ with monitoring and assessing the state's groundwater resources. To this end, the agency works to understand the types of contaminants in groundwater and identify areas of groundwater contamination. However, DEQ's budget is limited, and this affects how many wells can be tested each year. To help the state understand the quality of groundwater, the state also requires the seller of a home with a domestic well to test the well for specified contaminants and report the results to the Oregon Health Authority. Additionally, beginning in 2027, landlords will be required to test domestic wells at rental units located in areas designated as having high contaminant levels. Landlords will be required to report the results to both the state and their tenants. We talked earlier about the Oregon Water Resources Department's ability to take a special management approach to areas with declining groundwater levels. The Groundwater Quality Act also provides authority to designate areas with water quality concerns for special management. To restore areas where contaminant levels exceed safe levels for drinking water, the Environmental Quality Commission, DEQ's oversight board, can designate a location a groundwater quality management area. This means the area is in need of special attention to address groundwater contamination. Oregon has 3 groundwater quality management areas, all designated due to high nitrate levels. These areas are northern Malheur County, the lower Umatilla Basin, and the southern Willamette Valley. In 2025, the state established the Groundwater Quality Area of Concern designation. This designation is for areas where there are water quality concerns that need proactive management to prevent groundwater quality from getting worse. What happens once the Environmental Quality Commission has designated a groundwater quality management area or groundwater quality area of concern? The designations trigger requirements for state agencies to coordinate efforts to understand and address the groundwater contamination and related risks, and to communicate with the public about health risks, water treatment options, and actions to prevent future contamination. A local groundwater management committee comprised of community members is responsible for advising the state agencies in this work. The state has several mechanisms for addressing existing groundwater contamination. But what about preventing it before it happens? The DEQ protects groundwater through its regulation and permitting of activities that could impact groundwater quality. Examples include septic systems, underground water storage tanks, wastewater discharges, and hazardous waste. The Department of Environmental Quality also works in partnership with other agencies to address impacts to groundwater from land uses. The Oregon Department of Agriculture, Oregon Health Authority, and Oregon Water Resources Department also work to protect groundwater and prevent contamination. Let's talk a bit more about the role these state agencies play. The Oregon Department of Agriculture is responsible for preventing and controlling water pollution from agricultural activities. The agency develops water quality management plans and rules which identify practices to prevent water contamination. The Oregon Health Authority oversees the quality of drinking water and addresses public health impacts from contaminated groundwater. Through the Oregon Drinking Water Quality Act and the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act, the Oregon Health Authority regulates public water systems to ensure drinking water meets quality standards. The Oregon Health Authority also helps communities understand public health risks from groundwater contamination. Finally, the Oregon Water Resources Department, OWRD, addresses impacts to groundwater quality caused by the use of groundwater itself. OWRD protects groundwater quality from contamination through its oversight of well construction. It also works with other departments to ensure water uses do not harm water quality. In making special management designations, which we discussed earlier, OWRD is empowered to consider water quality as well as quantity. Thanks for joining us for this discussion of Oregon's groundwater laws. Let's revisit the key takeaways. Groundwater is a vital public resource that accounts for more than 90% of Oregon's freshwater supply. All water, including groundwater, belongs to the public, and most groundwater uses require a state water permit. But there are some exempt uses. The state's Groundwater Quality Act helps conserve, protect, and restore the quality of the state's groundwater. The state has special management designations to address declining groundwater levels and groundwater quality. Many state agencies work together to protect groundwater. To learn more, check out the rest of our series. And remember, Oregon water matters.